joining, everyone. This is Lucifer Tim, 33rd degree. It's March 31st, 2022. Live stream notifications have just gone out. I'll be right back. Go ahead and share the stream. Okay, phones are open, 833-311-1984. We did open phones last night, covered a lot of ground. This week we've been talking about Pizza Davidson, Kanye West world's burning, various theories that might explain what's behind our strangely scripted / rigged reality, the notion that we're already in the metaverse, and many other topics. Most of it revolving around this new world order religion that has been imposed upon us under the guise of protecting us from some kind of mysterious novel illness. And now here we are on the eve of the 42nd anniversary of the Georgia Guidestones. And you have our president come out and say specifically that it's time for a new world order. I mean, nothing surprising there. Take a listen to this quote from Brock Adams, Director, UN Health Organization. To achieve world government, it is necessary to remove from the minds of men their individualism, loyalty to family traditions, national patriotism, and religious dogmas. So you're like, check, 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 and check. So the recent attack on individualism is really through the attack on the free flow of information, turning you into basically a hate criminal, a thought criminal, a threat actor, a terrorist for spreading memes that go against the mainstream narratives that are really there to demoralize and undermine and subvert. Loyalty to family traditions. Well, family is the new F word. You can't even say that anymore, so they took care of that one. National patriotism. Oh, you mean QAnon? The people that are waiting for JFK to come back and save them? Is that what you mean by national patriots? Because that's all you see on TV. The nutters, the extremists, the domestic violent extremists. And of course, religious dogmas have all been replaced by worship of the state and its priesthood, which they have pretty much just, I think, provided us with a new priesthood and a new religion, and it's based on science, it's based on experts, just professionals who look the part. They keep a straight face when they tell you big lies, like about how the oceans are going to swallow up Florida. You know, global warming's 33, by the way. So if anything's going to happen with it, it's going to be now. If there's some way they can actually fake it. But I'm just pointing that out because they say you're a conspiracy theorist if you just don't trust the news, and it's like, well, what do you call the people that are consistently wrong about all of their forecasts? Are they not just conspiracy theorists? All right, we're joined by Flower, Osher 6, Invalis, John Cordone, Green Smoke, Jenna Lovecraft Reeves, Full as Bum, Alori Borealis, Frank Murr, Finbar, AJ206, Salty Siren, David, Camilla, Shannon, Wee, The Restream Robot, Lando Rock, Restless Bear, and Crazy Man. Restless Bear says, I'm a conspiracist. No, you're not supposed to take that. See, you're a conspiracy theorist, but that makes it sound like you have theories, like you think. Like you might do some kind of observations and record stuff. So no, they changed it from conspiracy theorist to conspiracist, which I'm suggesting here, based on their own usage of it, implies some kind of racist underpinning to all of your theories, which is absurd. It's just a smear. That's why we use conspiratainment, because we're not really for the race war psyop, although that is part of their main agenda, and we talk about that quite a bit. Let us go ahead and continue. I don't want to listen to Biden talk about the New World Order. That quote is going around. It's not new. Why do they call it new? It's the old world order. Just a few new, I guess, a couple new ways that they can extort money out of you, a few new ways to tax you, a few new things for you to pay for, but what's new about it? It's the same old thing, it's just updated. And there's nothing new about the whole New World Order concept. I'm suggesting it's already here. They're just changing the facades. Let's go through some headlines as well. Mike Lindell, the pillow guy, his groups are sending armed volunteers to harass minority voters in their homes. Elections coming up. So they're turning their attention from mandates and protesting masks to the 2022 election. Hunter Biden's laptop is out again, and people are frothing at the mouth over what that contains. I still contend it's a nothing burger. Okay, let's continue. The Batman, now this is the one I wanted to get into. The Batman movie that's out happens to contain a character that is essentially a way to attack you. So the Riddler is a QAnoner. I mean, not specifically, but if you read about him, it says here the Riddler peddles online conspiracy theories about hidden cabals that are secretly controlling the government of Gotham, and he radicalizes his followers. So again, this is definitely some kind of take on this Q story. This is from cracked.com. But even before the Batman movie came out, I looked at the trailers and I pointed this out at the time and I said, hey, look, you're seeing question marks. And I've been saying since 2020 that they're going to come for your question marks. They're banning what they call malinformation, misinformation, disinformation, asking questions. And I said, at some point, you're going to see UN tanks on your street, Chinese troops with blue helmets, and they're going to come in and they're going to take the question marks off your keyboards. And probably the Qs now, too. But what are the odds that Batman is fighting an enemy, a bad guy, that just happens to be kind of a QAnon archetype? A Riddler, a guy full of questions. And again, question marks, not something they're going to want to carry into the post-reset world. And this reminds me about this cartoon of there's an episode of Batman that we had analyzed in 2019. It was I think it was Justice League. Anyway, it was an episode where a conspiracy theorist takes over a newsroom, takes everyone hostage, and he tells the camera, he says, I'm not letting anybody go until you admit that the JFK assassination was a hoax. Now, luckily, Batman comes in and takes out the conspiracy theorist terrorist and saves us. So it's kind of the same story that they've been peddling. They've created this new enemy. But at the time, I thought, that's absurd. Who would even think that JFK was still alive? The guy's 106 if he is. And sure enough, that's like the main thread behind the QAnon narrative is that JFK is still alive and he's going to come back. So it shows you how the propaganda is actually, the propaganda that the QAnoners believe actually has some sort of precedent, and it's already been written into a lot of the entertainment. So they were already set up to be enemies. David Pryor says, Happy New World Order Day. Yep. And by the way, yeah, tomorrow is the 42nd anniversary of the Georgia Guidestones, and I don't believe in the Georgia Guidestones as some kind of prophecy about some impending culling of the herd, because they put them out 42 years ago, and the population has since metastasized. So they kind of can't do it. It's beyond their reach at this point. You know, if your plan is to reduce the population to 500,000, and you only have a few million, or a few hundred million, and then you let the number go to several billion before you come up with a scheme, it's too late. And the idea that there are too many people is really just misanthropy anyway. All right, let us continue. We're looking at the Riddler on the screen. So this Batman movie has more or less an attack on anybody to the right. So it says he radicalizes his 500 followers. This new take on the Riddler conspicuously calls to mind recent news stories involving waves of toxic online misinformation, such as QAnon. And notice how information can now be toxic. Like, you can get sick. You'll throw up if you see this meme. Like, they give you the idea. Like, they use viral, the word viral. They use the language of epidemiology. But they give you the idea that these things are actually toxic. Malinformation is a new word. And I searched it in quotes, and a few people noted it. Like, when did malinformation become a thing? Where After 9/11, it was all about the weapons of mass destruction. Now, WMD, now it's MDM. They just flip over the W, and it's dismiss and malinformation. And this is put out by the DHS. So memes are like a threat to civilization. It's the memes that they're after. So it says this new take on the Riddler calls to mind recent news stories involving the toxic misinformation such as QAnon. The problem is that the character, the Riddler, is right. He does expose a complex web of corruption spun by shadowy elites. So the Batman is commenting on the dangers of these fringe internet communities, but also validating their theories. This seems pretty messed up. So this is a review from Cracked, and they're really troubled by this because the ending doesn't make the Riddler into the bad guy necessarily. You know, another movie that we were talking about yesterday, Utopia, with John Cusack. John Cusack plays a character very similar to Bill Gates. He creates this synthetic meat, and it spreads a flu unintentionally. This flu-borne virus then requires a vaccine, which he peddles, and you find out that he actually created the virus itself in order to sell the vaccine. Anyway, this whole show was about how the vaccine was intended to depopulate everybody. So you can understand why Utopia was pulled after one season. The thing is, at the end, the anti-vaxxers destroyed a vat of, well, not a vat, an actual entire warehouse of the vaccine stuff. So the heroes of the story were the anti-vaxxers, and they can't have that, so they pulled it. All right, going through some comments. Thinks he's a penguin says they had to retract the John Denver thing in the comments. Yeah, if you want to call and explain that. And we were talking about John Denver because this is bizarre, but Vincent Fuchsia is running for Senate. Vincent Fuchsia is a major MAGA Trump fan, and many Trumpers believed he was actually JFK in disguise. Later they figured out, no, he's John Denver in disguise. Like, they are obsessed with being saved by a bunch of dead celebrities. But look, you can't call them crazy. You got to see this. This is Eric Trump, and I have a video of this if you want to actually watch it. Let me pull up the video. So Eric Trump's at an event recently, and someone presents him with a portrait of his father, posing beneath a big electric cue. And while they present the painting, you hear the theme song from Star Wars, you know, the Imperial March. So here's Donald Trump with a big cue above his head. Theme song to Star Wars, and Eric Trump receiving the painting. And this is a big, I think it's about 4 foot by 6 foot. It's a large painting.
I love that.
Hey,
That's
Eric,
incredible.
Hey, can you come up here, Jackson, and can you kind of show it to the crowd real quick here, to Jackson and Shaq? You gotta show. Look at this guy. He painted this himself. Look at this. Hold it up.
That's amazing.
Wow. Look at that. All right, now, Chad, there's one more painting. One more you want to unveil, and then I'll get out of your way.
So they're unveiling these paintings of their God Emperor Trump with a very conspicuous lightning bolt cue above his head. And many of them still believe he's president. And they actually believe that JFK Jr. is president. And, you know, let me go and show an example. They actually believe this. So here's a meeting with the cultists. And when I say cult, I don't mean it to be disparaging. It's just, it is what it is. What are you going to call it? The whole cult of JFK Jr. is a thing. So here's a clip where this man claims that JFK Jr. was there with President Trump when he was president back in July of 2020 at Mount Rushmore. And supposedly, you're about to hear the voice of JFK Jr. in a minute. I'll play it. But this guy claims, he claims JFK was able to walk on top of the head of George Washington and pose for some pictures. So here we go.
A moment on the face of this planet that are Q capable.
Now, one more thing I had to bring up. So they truly believe that JFK, who was ostensibly shot, in 1963, was literally the second coming of Jesus. And that's why the deep state had to stop him. That's what they truly believe. And so once you understand that, the rest of this makes sense.
Are the most trusted. They can carry a nuclear weapon. No one else can. I heard that going off in my ear. Yeah, that's what happens when you talk about Q.
Yeah, no, you're listening to a meeting of the true believers. By the way, thanks, Lord Dorkington. We appreciate the support here, and all those at. Is Dorkington a place that you're a lord of? Anyway, all of your serfs and all them that you preside over. Thanks to all of you for contributing, and anyone else. If you contribute to this channel, I'm going through the donation list at Ko-Fi.com, and I send claim links for non-fungible tokens, and we have a whole new collection of those. Like on the screen, if you're looking, you see what looks to be a Funko Pop penguin with a wrench. It's an example of the kind of NFTs that you can find over there at the shop. Digital assets. Start building your portfolio. I made it really easy. If you've never opened a wallet before in your life, once you click the link, it opens up a window where you have an opt-in. So you're just 2 clicks away from actually having one of these things in a digital wallet. And it's realer than anything else. I mean, as real as anything else in the world today. Anyway, this is again the QAnon conference talking about how JFK was standing on top of Mount Rushmore.
Q is 6 military intelligence agencies led by the President of the United States of America. And a very, very special man that is helping, who currently serves as the Vice President of the United States of America. And it was kind of fun to be on that helicopter that dropped him off on Mount Rushmore so he could stand on George Washington's head. Yeah.
She says, was JFK there? He says, yeah. So imagine JFK Jr. standing on top of Mount Rushmore, and JFK's in the hospital and Trump's there. And these people they're just totally ecstatic about this idea. And these are the ones who gathered at the grassy knoll thinking he was going to reappear. And they truly believe the Kennedys are the blood of Christ. That's the basis for this whole thing. So you're not looking at just a mere political cult. You're looking at something a little more sophisticated, and it's not going to go away. I'm going to play a few more seconds of it.
You're welcome. What's that?
Who's the vice president?
John F. Kennedy, Jr. I got the privilege of being on Don Jr.'s helicopter with Gene Ho.
So anyway, this guy's hanging out with the Trumps, and he claims they're hanging out with the Kennedys. And this is something this isn't from last year, this is from last night. I'm looking at the people talking about it. So they're all true believers. That's kind of my point here. So just so you know, it's not going away, and this explains why Eric Trump would be here, receiving a painting of his father with a Q behind him. And again, just to make it very clear, Q is believed to be the dead JFK who supposedly didn't die. So you have a dead Kennedy, and that Trump is his agent. Maxwell Cooper says, is there money in that grift? Well, I don't know. How much do they make off of those gigantic JFK Jr. for vice president flags that they buy? I mean, there has to be money in it, for sure. But the fact is, the Trumps aren't doing anything to disassociate themselves from Q. Just want to point that out. This is something else. We were talking about Dark City with a caller last night. Keith Sutherland is in that movie, and so is Jennifer Connelly, which I'm going to watch that movie. I'm going to rent it on Amazon because Jennifer Connelly is in Labyrinth, and we were talking about Labyrinth and her relationship to Jareth, the Goblin King, the one who maintains the prison, as it relates to this archetype of Alice in Wonderland, Dorothy in Oz, or Dolores in Westworld. So Jennifer Connelly is another one of these typecast characters that enters into a dynamic with the prisoner of that particular matrix. And in this case, in Dark City, she's in it as well, so I'm going to have to watch it. It has all the usual Saturnian symbolism, Chronos, the clock, time control, just the color of it very dark, but also I noted that one of these alien controllers in Dark City looks exactly like the alien controller at the World Economic Foundation, Darth Schwab. Same uniform, same demeanor. They even sound the same. So, just something else I was pointing out. This is probably what we would call predictive programming. Thanks, Dumb S, for the support. Keeps the text message notifications going out. I believe we have about 150 people receiving text message notifications, and it helps keep the numbers on the live streams up when we have a lot of people show up right away. Jennifer Conley is in NOAA 2, says Finbar. Well, this is one of the other areas that we examine here is when an actor is put into a certain role, you'll find it's a repeated role, and there are certain aspects that are connected symbolically, just not overtly. But I'll be examining Dark City in this context. We were talking about Kronos and Saturn and the various archetypes that represent this particular god, or whatever you want to call it, and how consistent the symbolism is, even the clock itself. And this totally explains why Jeff Bezos, who doesn't look too far off from either of these two, spent $42 million on that clock, which he had installed inside of a mountain in Texas. I mean, why would you spend $42 million on a clock? Well, if you knew the number 42 significance to all of the space popes, you would understand it's because it's what their cult is actually about. It's the reference to the Earth God. All right, Joe Ross sent me this comment. Red Dawn was filmed in Pontiac, Michigan. Just a follow-up comment. Last night we were talking about, based on something a caller brought up, all the interesting associations between Wolverines and Michigan, and the colors blue and yellow, and Wolverines, as going far back, as like, for example, the X-Men character in blue and yellow, Michigan Wolverines. We'll follow up on that. And someone else pointed this out to me, some interesting bits of numerology, I guess. And you look at the stuff and you could ask, is this just a coincidence? But I tested this with many other events, and I didn't find anything else. So this is what it shows. This is a TikTok video. If you take the starting dates for World War I, World War II, and the Ukraine invasion, and you add them up. So World War I is July 28th, 1914. You add the digits, you get 68. World War II, September 1st, 1939. Add it, you get 68. Ukraine invasion. Add 2, 24, 20, and 22. You get 68. So the TikToker who uploaded this is just pointing out that there is this kind of curious phenomenon here where these starting dates all do connect with the number 68. Advanced Setting says, is Klaus Bezos, BFTF? BFTF, as in like BFFs? I don't know what the T is, but yeah, I think they're all part of the same club. Like, what's that one? Is it Flash Gordon? The bad guy has the bald head. That kind of set the archetype. What was his name? Ming the Merciless. And I think the Satanists started adopting this look. And now it's the look over there at the UN. Yeah, Ming the Merciless. Again, interesting archetypes. Nothing here is coincidental when you look at these, the way that they present these characters. It's very noticeable with some of these celebrity scientists we were pointing out. Just, for example, and I was looking at Ming, and it reminded me of Spock. But if you ever look at Bill Nye the Science Guy, and you look at his eyebrows, and compare them to the eyebrows of Spock from Star Trek, I noticed, well, okay, this is a perfect match, so what's the deal? And a lot of people said that. Like, here's a tweet from Andrew Nadeau. The older Bill Nye gets, the more he looks like Spock. I didn't realize this was an option for aging, but I would like to sign up for that one too. So this guy would also like to age into a venerable Captain Spock. But when I saw this, I thought, okay, this is just a way of associating him with somebody a lot smarter and a little more collected, a little less cringe, and a lot more credible. I mean, it's a smart move. So it's kind of subtle, not too overt. He didn't go with the bowl cut. That would have given it away. But yeah, you're looking at basically what I would consider to be a stylistic choice designed to create this subconscious association. I mean, you even see him making the hand sign. And I've seen him making other signs as well. Bill Nye is a very interesting character. I really think he jumped the shark with the sex junk episode, if any of you recall that. Hopefully you blocked the memory. But yeah, here he is doing the Spock thing. So then I looked at some of the other popular scientists, and I'm like, wait, Brian Cox looks exactly like Carl Sagan with the hair. Like, that's definitely a copy. And then Michio Kaku, I'm like, he's aging into an Einstein. So this is not a new thing, just pointing this out. None of them are original. Advanced Setting says, any predictions for tomorrow? Yeah, it'll be the 22nd. No, for real though, 322, very significant day. 322 is the chapter number of the Skull and Bone Society. I have a couple notes on that, so let's get into that really quick. And before we do, I want to say shout out to Russian Vids. Brave move. I mean, I may not agree with him or his stance, but supposedly he changed his name to RV Truth to be in solidarity with the Ukrainians. So he dropped Russian, and now it's just RV Truth. I think it's commendable. Okay, so let's get back to the 322 thing, because I think there's a lot we can take from that. Let's start with this. If you're not familiar with the Skull and Bones Society and the connection to Batman, this is a good place to start. Because as we've been discussing, the Batman movies are often used in conjunction with the major psyops of our day. These tie-ins are part of how they establish narratives. So here we go. I mean, it's very simple when you get down to it. Order out of chaos, Joker's the patsy, Joker's the super spreader, the anti-vaxxer, the terrorist, the DVE, domestic violent extremist. Batman is law and order. It's not a coincidence that on March 4th, when the new Batman movie came out, on the same day, they announced that they were going to reinstate the death penalty for the Boston bomber, whose name is Joker. Sounds like Joker, and that's actually his nickname. Okay, this is from Batman 1966, where they talk about the origin of the Skull and Bone Society and how it happened to have been founded by Batman's grandfather.
Good idea, this rehearsal. The ladies, such worthy causes. I personally favor Miss Natural Resources. I'd like to make her my own personal charity. All are worthy. Now you can say that again.
Now, he said, okay, here we go. This is where he asks about Bruce Wayne's grandfather. And this is from Batman episode 33. This aired in 1966.
His great-grandfather.
I understand he was tapped for Skull and Bones.
Tapped for it? Sir, he founded Skull and Bones.
So, tapped for it? No, he founded Skull and Bones. So, Skull and Bones Society is really just a Templar organization. You look at their logo, it's got the 322. There are rumors about what it takes to get in. The idea that they tap 15 people a year isn't really a secret. There was some undercover reporter who had actually gone in and recorded one of their initiations, but it had been pulled before I could download it. And this was like when I first started looking into it. It was a short clip, but you see the courtyard, and I believe the initiation involved kissing a skull. I think the officiant was wearing a George Bush mask. I think there was screaming and the slitting of throats of naked women. I mean, this was at Yale. I'm assuming it was all theatrical. We have to assume so. Why would our presidents be involved in something so heinous? Now, the Skull and Bones Society, I think they were sued, weren't they, over Geronimo's skull. So apparently one of the things that they were known for was digging up the bones as part of their initiation ceremonies. So Geronimo was in prison in Fort Sill, Oklahoma, when he died in 1909. 9 years later, members of the Skull and Bones who were stationed at the army base absconded with his skull. The Skull and Bones clubhouse, known as the Tomb, is secured with a padlock. So you have a mystery of the bones, Geronimo's missing skull. So the Order of Death, the Skull and Bones Society, it's all about, in fact, there's some interesting pictures where you can see these individuals posing in front of a grandfather clock. And I think this is all very noteworthy symbolism. The clock combined with the skull and crossed bones. And the cross is another one of these symbols of Saturn. So here we are again looking at an article from NPR, Mystery of the Bones, Geronimo's Missing Skull. I believe they even have the skull of Pancho Villa. I'm not sure who else, but they say that Prescott Bush, the father of George W. Bush, was involved in stealing this one. And I remember there was some group that was trying to get it back. I hear that they also steal license plates that have 322 on the back. Okay, so at any one moment there are approximately 800 living members of this organization across the world. So any one of them could have the skull by now, says Alexandra Robbins, who wrote Secrets of the Tomb. Secrets of the Tomb, Skull and Bones, the Ivy League, and the Hidden Paths of Power. In an email, University of Yale spokesman Tom Conroy wrote, Yale does not possess Geronimo's remains. Yale does not own the Skull and Bones building or its property. Nor does Yale have access to the property or the building. Efforts to reach members of Skull and Bones for comment were met with silence. Finbar says, yeah, he climbed the wall of the courtyard. Okay, so you saw that video. Finbar asks what they do with it, with the skulls. Do they drink blood out of it? You know, I don't really know if it's just a way of getting everybody bound up, you know, common criminality, mutual blackmail, just establishing a pattern for the future. Because if you're willing to go dig up a skull for your friends, you're all kind of locked in pretty tight, I'd imagine. And what's next? And I've read about their coffin rituals. But I bring this up because we're just about on the date 322, which, again, it's the anniversary date of the Georgia Guidestones being installed. But it's also a number frequently associated with these various psyops. I have an email I want to respond to. If you send any emails, timosmond007@gmail, I'll generally respond here live if it's interesting. Another Apollo 11 number, man with one red shoe. This is from Boring NPC. It says, you seem to enjoy analyzing the symbolism of the space program, so here's something for you. I just noticed the first letters of the last names of the last 3 astronauts on Apollo 11 are AAC or 113. Any thoughts? Did I recently hear you mention about red shoes and Freemasons? That was a caller. We had a caller who mentioned something about the Red Shoe Club, which is kind of like the Black Eye Club. There's a whole lot of celebrities who show up in these pictures with these red shoes that are allegedly made from, I don't know, human leather. If so, then you might be interested in the 1985 movie The Man with One Red Shoe, starring a young Tom Hanks. Yeah, Tom Hanks is a very interesting character because on the one hand, he's like America's dad. He's very trustworthy. He's this, just this face everybody knows. He's credible. But then on the other side, the QAnoners think that he is one of the top baby eaters, that he's literally probably right up there with Hillary Clinton, who they believe has kuru, which is the sickness you get from eating brains, I believe. Maxwell Cooper says, wasn't King Soopers last year on 322? The King Soopers thing, now that's one that you probably could have predicted. I remember on 322, was it last year, I said, this would be a super day for a PSYOP. And then, of course, King Soopers in Boulders, Colorado, store number 33. You had the gunman come in March 22nd last year. And look at this. The police did not enter the store until 3:22 p.m. What are the odds? Again, this was store number 33, 33 union employees, and supposedly a bunch of people were there getting their groceries, and some people were getting vaxxed. So they're there for their COVID-19 shot, and they get an AR-15 shot. This was this kind of ironic point the media was making. But anyway, the King Soopers store was shot up by a guy who was doing this in retaliation for Christ Church. So this was a radical Islamic extremist who wanted to get back at the white nationalist extremist for shooting up the mosques. And again, this was the 22nd, so it's about a week from the anniversary of the Christ Church shooting. And this King Soopers shooting followed up on the heels of the parlor shootings in Atlanta, which, and this is, so to me this is evidence of it all being, staged operations. The parlor shootings, which again were right before this, were templated off of the Christ Church shootings. Multiple locations, target immigrant population, the shooter, an internet radicalized white nationalist racist, pulled out of his car following a pit maneuver at both New Zealand, Christchurch, and in Atlanta. That's where they drive the person off the road and pull them out of the car. So identical psyops. And then this event was a response to the first one. Like, these three events should not be connected in any way, but they're perfectly connected. And most of these shooters all have the same basic manifesto. Like, they're all just kind of regurgitating the same thing. They need better writers over there at the FBI or wherever it is they gin up these characters. And that's not hyperbole. There's a pretty good article on Vice about how the FBI was actually bankrolling neo-Nazi literature to the tune of like $100,000. So if you're a writer looking for work and you don't have a conscience, FBI bankrolled publisher of neo-Nazi books. That's from Vice.com. Typical, I imagine. I wonder if the FBI pays Eric Dubé to write flat Earth content and then insert, Hitler into it. I mean, what other incentive do people have for promulgating a lot of this absurd stuff? But yeah, King Soopers, that was last year. I'm going to open up phones here in just a moment. So the shooter was Ahmad al-Issa. He was arrested after being shot in the leg. He was temporarily hospitalized. And later it was explained that he did this as a retaliation. Look at this. The police did not enter until 3:22 p.m. on 3/22. And look, this is so predictable. That's why so many of us were watching that day. And then the more you dig, the more you find it's clearly a coordinated operation. And, at this point, it's tragic comedy. All right, let's go back. We're talking about, someone had asked me what we think is going to happen tomorrow. Oh, check this out. Yesterday we talked about Alex Stein, 99, the comedian turned truther turned rapper who actually had a co-hosting gig with Alex Jones, who he complimented as the funniest comedian on earth. It's like, whoa, you almost blew his cover, Bill Hicks. But take a look. So some Russian official saw the performance where he rapped about putting a bullet in Putin's head, and he wrote here, this is a translation, in the U.S. state of Texas, a local official showed support for Ukraine through rap. So he looks so official, they assume he's official. They don't know he's just a YouTuber and a comedian in a suit at city council. He says, among our officials too, sometimes there are various strange turnips, but I personally have not seen such frank morons as in the USA. So thank you, Alex Stein. I knew that would happen, and I'd rather they call him a frank moron than send a hit team. Finbar says, Boulder shooting fake AF. Absolutely. And it's good news. They want to call it hate speech or whatever for criticizing the news, but it's good that that wasn't a real event, and it's easily discernible as a psychological operation. Hey, take a listen to this. This is heads up. They're going to pretty much do some kind of controlled demolition of all your favorite internet sites.
Urging private sector partners to take immediate action to shore up their defenses against potential cyber attacks. We've previously warned about the potential for Russia to conduct cyber attacks against the United States, including as a response to the unprecedented economic costs that the U.S. and allies and partners impose in response to Russia's further invasion of Ukraine. Today, we are reiterating those warnings, and we're doing so based on evolving threat intelligence that the Russian government is exploring options for potential cyber attacks on critical infrastructure in the United States.
So, why are you hearing about this now? I mean, it's so convenient. I mean, we've been predicting that this would be the case, but yeah, they kind of tell you in advance. That's kind of my thinking here. Now, here's something I found that was kind of bizarre. This is an article from the LA Times from May of 2001. So, when Timothy McVeigh was about to be executed, he requested some kind of classical music concert that would accompany him on his way to his execution. So, for Timothy McVeigh's soul's benefit, right before his execution, you had a composer named Woodard. And Woodard had a 12-minute piece that he said would, quote, cause the soul of Timothy McVeigh to go to heaven. So this is all from an article in the LA Times. Unbelievable. So it says, quote, it seems like a requiem should be appreciated by the dying subject in order to keep it from being a selfish endeavor by the survivors, said Woodard, who describes his faith as an unwavering belief in life after death and in the spirit world that surrounds us constantly. So this is just a short piece in the Los Angeles Times called Concert at a Killer's Death. So this is the guy who played music while Timothy McVeigh died. But now listen to this. Among Woodard's interests is numerology. He points out the significance of the number 33 surrounding McVeigh. Quote, one cannot help but notice. You write to a fellow, and his address is P.O. Box 33. You look up where he lives, and you find out it's 33 acres, the prison grounds. Then you find out he's 33 years old. And in that final appeal last year, he used legal procedure number 33. Woodard also says that, like Christ, McVeigh will be 33 and universally despised at the time of his execution. So he makes these comparisons absurd comparisons to Jesus. He compares McVeigh to Jesus. And my point being, this is because Timothy McVeigh was an engineered martyr that could be attached to this new right-wing threat, these white nationalists, and that's the purpose that he serves. Moreover, he was radicalized and inspired by the book The Turner Diaries, which we talked about yesterday. And the reason why that's significant too is that this is part of creating this character that people find believable. He's as real as Osama bin Laden. He's basically the opposite. In fact, that's probably why he was executed on 6/11/01. About 92 days before 9/11. It's sort of an inverted 9/11. In other words, a domestic 9/11 versus one from the outside. And for those who care to look into it, there's plenty to suggest here that he didn't actually die, that it was all just part of a bigger psyop, and that he's been repurposed, that he has a new name and he still works in, I believe, Miami. What is it, Sergeant or Specialist Weissapal? You got to take a look at this. So you actually do have an FBI agent who looks like an aged Timothy McVeigh. This is actually a video on the subject. It's from Kill Illuminati Rebirth is Tim McVeigh, Paul Weissapal. And I can't refute this. I've noticed this before. And this video is put up by, it looks like...
After the Oklahoma City... The FBI has released security tape showing the chaos that followed.
So this video is 10 minutes. It goes through the various aspects, but he does do a Photoshop side-by-side of McVeigh, and he contrasts him with this special agent who's still alive. And, to me, it's a dead ringer. Finbar says, no doubt it's him, same ears. I agree. Finbar says, I love that guy, he's a brave soul. You're talking about Alex Stein 99. Yeah, this is getting increasingly unreal. I watched the episode on InfoWars, though. I mean, it's interesting to see what happens, though, when you use irony or sarcasm or any kind of satire. The media doesn't know, as in like the automatic filtration process, doesn't know whether it's safe to pass it on or not, and sometimes they let what they consider to be misinformation get through their filters. Okay, now there is a lot of bad acting here if you want to watch some bad crisis acting, which we talk about this a lot. And, people used to say, why are these actors in the news so bad? Are they trying to show us? Are they tearing down the veil? And I've been pointing out, no, they've always been bad. Crisis acting has actually gotten better over the years. I mean, not by much. The Government Actors Guild seem like a bunch of Hollywood dropouts, the gags, as we affectionately call them here, but most of them can't hide the duper's delight. And it's probably because they're getting paid, or they're nervous, but, you're looking at also footage from a time before you had real-time criticism. Like here, we sit around talking about news events, and we can take clips from yesterday and criticize it, and call it out as a hoax or fake. That wasn't always possible. So we're in a new era here. But yeah, if you look back, it was always that bad. So look at these jokers.
Think about during the thing, and tears still come to my eyes.
Incredibly tight.
He says tears come to my eyes, and he starts laughing. And somehow Robert Stack doesn't notice. This is on Unsolved Mysteries. I didn't want to get sidetracked, but just in case there's any domestic violence extremists out there still saddened by Timothy McVeigh's death, he's still alive. Now take a look. This is Weisseball, and this is a side by side, same years. I mean, most of these terrorists are just constructs. Same. And you can kind of descramble his name if you wanted to, and I believe there's a clue hidden therein. We're joined by Pippi Langstruff and Claptrap. That SOB. Yeah, I would say it's the same one. Claptrap says, is that an onion in your pocket, or are you happy to see a crisis? Yeah, that's a reference to 1/6/2021, the day of the so-called insurrection. There was a crisis actor that actually had tears, but it was revealed that this person had an onion in a cloth. Again, this is pretty much a dead ringer. We'll move on. I've also been unearthing a number of alleged 9/11 victims that aren't on the death rosters. What do you make of that? I mean, we've been talking about Pete Davidson and how his father died on 9/11 in the towers, supposedly. But I've encountered a few others, and I'm like, what do you do about that? Like, here's an interesting little rabbit trail we went down today in the Discord server. There was an actor who played Gage in Pet Sematary. You know, the kid that comes back to life? Okay, well, that actor was in a movie called Mercury Rising. So I looked into that movie, Mercury Rising, which has Bruce Willis. And this kid plays the role of an autistic who is able to interpret or discern state secrets by reading, cracking codes. That was kind of the theme. So the movie, again, is called Mercury Rising. So I look into this movie, and the star of the movie, this kid who played Gage, interestingly enough, also lost a father on 9/11 who was in the towers at the time. So I thought that's interesting because Mercury Rising has some other relationship to 9/11. It turns out that on that day, and this is from the New York Times, the first plane hit the World Trade Center at 8:46 a.m. and Mercury was rising at that very moment. The article here, Mercury rising as airliner strikes Twin Towers. So I thought, that's interesting. You're starring in a movie called Mercury Rising, and you have this connection. So I started digging a little bit deeper, and I couldn't find this actor's father's name on the death roster. So I kind of thought, well, could this just be some way of getting some kind of clout? Could it be made up, like a made-up resume, a bullet point or something? So it turns out that no, on that day, he assumed the role of head chief of the Chickasaw Republic, the 7th one, on that day, because the present chief was the one who had died. That was his father, so he inherited the role, or he's the next in line. So it's just kind of odd that his name wouldn't be on the death roster. And there's a few others we're looking at. I mean, our research is getting somewhere. All right, let us continue. We're just going through my Minds account at the moment. I had a lot of notes down. All the world's a stage, all the women and men merely players. They have their exits and their entrances. That's William Shakespeare. This concept of the world as a stage, it's more literal than not, as we've been saying. In fact, wasn't it like in 2020 they really gave away the game? You know, the first guy to get vaxxed was a guy named William Shakespeare. He lived in Warwickshire, which is where the original William Shakespeare happened to live. And I believe he had a sister named Margaret, which William Shakespeare also did. Yeah, William Shakespeare gets the COVID vaccine. First man to get the jab, William Shakespeare. William Shakespeare, first man in the UK to receive COVID-19 vax, 81 years old. William or Bill Shakespeare. And again, he was in Warwickshire. He actually lived there. Just all these coincidences, endlessly fascinating. Almost unbelievable. I was also doing a little bit of research into the Manson event and what followed around that, especially the cult itself. Just comparing it to the recent news with Marilyn Manson and all of his the women in his life. And I was looking at this documentary. It's it talks about how Manson was controlling everyone through fear. But I'm looking at these Charlie's Angels. They all had these buzz cuts. And they talked really tough about defending Charlie, and it just seemed entirely unbelievable. It looked entirely scripted, like a really bad movie. And they reminded me of the Lollipop Guild from the Emerald City. I mean, real clownish stuff. And so we'll be doing some research into the Charles Manson phenomenon, which I also would posit was an entirely Hollywood-driven psyop that I don't think anybody actually died. But there are definitely some interesting connections worth looking at here, especially when you tie in organized Satanism. You did have Susan Atkins, the one who supposedly did the heinous killing of the wife of Polanski. She was one of the witches or topless dancers that Anton LaVey from the Church of Satan hired, and there's pictures of her posing inside of a coffin. So we'll get into the Manson thing deeper, but here's a documentary. It's from the Daily Mail. I find it just to be so unbelievable. Like, looking at the news of the past is just retro auto-hoaxing is what we've called it. Charles Manson's Satanic Maidens. The cult leader's ruthless control of his disciples with sex, drugs, and fear is laid bare in chilling footage of shaven-headed girls wielding knives and guns from a macabre video hidden for 40 years. So I'm looking at this supposedly macabre video, and I'm telling you, it's like the Lollipop Guild. They're not intimidating in the slightest, and they seem like it seems like really bad acting. And what they say is, if you laid a finger on Charlie, we would chew their necks off. I'll play some clips. You can listen to these girls describing their fanatic loyalty to their...
Whatever is necessary to do, you do it. When somebody needs to be killed, there's no wrong. You do it. And then you move on. And you kill whoever gets in your way. This is us.
Does that sound believable to anybody here? And she's posing with the weapon. I don't find any of the stuff believable. It hasn't aged well. You know, you look at the old space program footage and you're like, did people actually believe this? And yeah, I just think we're more sophisticated audiences in the 2020s, and this stuff isn't going over very well. I can see why they kept it stashed for 40 years. So I'll go through this, I'll find some choice clips, and I'll post it tomorrow. Here's something else I wanted to bring up. I think this might be a contradiction. You tell me. So this is an image. On the left you have a Tesla Roadster in outer space, allegedly. And behind it you see the ball Earth that we're all stuck to, supposedly. And the thing is, the ball Earth is completely dark on the other side. So the sunlit side, presumably day, is bright. The other side is dark. So I'm wondering, why is the dark side of the Earth dark? Because the footage that we get from the International Space Station always shows the thing to be lit on the backside. As in, you can see cities, you can see street lights, you can see everything. You can see the signs of life. So what's the deal here? How come from 300 miles up, the Earth is glowing like a Christmas tree? But from 3,000 miles away, it's completely dark on the other side. Is that a contradiction? Anyone here? Von Gogh says, referring to the Charlie's Angel, it looks like purposefully bad acting, like she's hamming it up. Well, that's what I mean. That's not acting. You're supposed to be chilled. The Daily Mail said this is chilling footage. So I'm watching it thinking, okay, I'm going to see some crazy women under mind control. And no, I just see these goofy girls that remind me of the Lollipop Gang from The Wizard of Oz, which, I mean, they are kind of grotesque and a little bit intimidating, but laughable. So, no, I don't believe the Manson story to be real. Too many holes in that story. And we'll continue. And look, there's this theory that Charles Manson is a total construct and that possibly even George W. Bush might have had a little stint. Has anybody seen that? George W. Bush and his voice analysis and even the facial recognition software will actually tell you that George Bush is like 95% Charles Manson. Like, this is from Paste. Let me bring up a couple comparisons for you. I mean, this has been going around for some time. There's just this uncanny resemblance between the two, and it's very pronounced in the voices. George W. Bush and Charles Manson. Daily Motion Video actually has a compilation here. If anybody has a convenient voice comparison, I'll play it. There's so many here. Bush-isms sound like Charles Manson-isms. Charles Manson, played by George W. Bush. Excerpt. Let's take a look. By the way, phones are open, 833-311-1984. We're now in spring, and I did do some research on this matter of Persephone, and this would be Persephone's release time. So I don't think it's a coincidence that you have this Persephone archetype with Evan Wood, and the story of her imprisonment, more or less, by the Hades archetype, her kidnapper, that would be Manson, and that now the Phoenix Rising documentary comes out. It seems very timed with the changing of the season. Specifically even releasing it on the 15th of March, the Ides of March, which was the name of the final movie she was in when she terminated that relationship. Okay, let me play this. Charles Manson, George Bush.
Well, I think this isn't the first time our nation's ever been divided. I remember what it was like when I got out of college. There was a Vietnam War and a draft. There were major race riots. There was political assassinations. The president was nearly impeached. And a lot of people thought the country was going down the tubes. And it turns out we're too strong to go down the tubes.
Okay, now let's segue in.
I'm not a person to interview. I don't like to play interviews. But I'm stuck under a game of ignorance. I'm stuck under little brain people You dig? And I have to try to get around that the only way I can. The only time I can get unhandcuffed is when I'm here with the media. I've been 20 years in handcuffs. If that makes any sense to anybody in this world, 20 years in handcuffs.
Yeah, okay, so you're listening to Charles Manson. You're listening to Charles Manson. He blended it in from George Bush, the first part of this, but no, this is Manson right now. I can't tell a difference.
So he can play daddy, to you. I mean,
And listen, I mean, if you don't hear, you hear it there. You can hear the cadence, the intonation, the delivery. It's Bush-esque. And I'm just laughing too because I'm watching this Charles Manson one. And if you want to see it, it's called Charles.
Yeah, so this has been going around for some time. So the voices are very, very close. And I've done this with a number of these, and it's undeniable. But it's not only that, but let me pull this up. If you search W and Manson, their faces, the facial recognition sites actually kind of equate the two, which also is kind of strange. What does this mean? One theory is that the entire Manson thing was a psyop, which I find to be believable. And could George Bush have played that role? I don't think there's a strong resemblance. I don't know. Maybe they're just both at peak crazy. I'm not quite sure. What do you think? Does anybody here think that George W. Bush literally played that role? Someone else had pointed out, I think it was Brend here, Manson's face tattoo changes its size and position over the years. Yeah, I've noticed that. I've seen discrepancies, like there are several different Mansons. And if you listen to Manson today, he's basically speaking the same language as Greta. I think he's dead now, actually. But it's usually his last few years is all about preserving our atmosphere. We're running out of air, etc. David A. Pryor says, I think Manson had several actors. The older version was Bush Jr. Oh, hey, the Babylon Bee, which is kind of a right-wing onion. I mean, I like satire, I like the creativity, but it's definitely partisan, and they play into all these various partisan footballs. Well, they got themselves kicked off of Twitter. Hi, Babylon Bee. The Babylon Bee has been locked for violating the Twitter rules against hateful conduct. And this is because they put Rachel Levine as Man of the Year. And Rachel Levine got Woman of the Year. So misgendering is considered to be an act of hate. And I'm surprised they weren't a little more savvy, a little more band savvy. But they like to, push and prod. So they got what they wanted. But I was looking at this article, I'm like, what are they talking about? Well, they had some runner-ups, and so I don't know if this exonerates them, but it wasn't just Rachel Levine that they misgendered. They also suggested that Colin Kaepernick ought to be recommended as Woman of the Year. Also The Rock. So here are the winners of the Babylon Bee Women of the Year. Dwayne The Rock Johnson, wow, what a beautiful woman. Hulk Hogan. And these are all people who've played these roles in movies. We had no idea Hulk Hogan is a woman, but there's no denying this photographic evidence, and he's in a tutu. Look at this brave, powerful woman playing football. You go, girl. That's Colin Kaepernick. President Zelensky, what a fantastic lady. We're so thankful Ukraine has such a strong woman leader during these difficult times. Mitt Romney, runner-up or guest, Woman of the Year, inspiration to us all. Stephen Colbert. Justin Trudeau. This year, Miss Trudeau showed the world that anyone can be a dictator. The ghost of Kiev. An actual photo proves that the ghost of Kiev is a woman. SpongeBob from the episode where he dressed as a woman and pretended to be a mother. Kyle Rittenhouse's prosecutor. Shattering glass ceilings by showing that even the girls can attempt to put innocent people in jail. It says, congratulations to all these brave, beautiful women. Anyway, it says here, not satire, the big banks are seizing the assets of conservatives. Coffee shop chains are advocating for the defunding of police, and woke corporations are blah blah, send us some money. Okay, you get it. So they kind of go after everything. Phase Polarizer has joined us. Let's see, the missing... Hey, if you want to call in, 833-311-1984. We were talking about Dark City, continuation from last night's conversation. We brought up Eric Trump receiving a big painting of his father with a Q halo. We've also talked about the new Batman movie and how they've turned the Riddler into QAnon. And so Batman is going after QAnon. Then we have this one here. If you look at the screen, the main villain from Batman happens to be a Bill Gates looking character. That's almost identical. So what do you make of that? If you want to comment on any of these things, the number is 833-311-1984. Mostly talking about, of course, the new Batman movie. I haven't watched it yet, but some of these obvious tie-ins to reality. Not so interested in talking about Hunter Biden or any of this manufactured drama. We've covered General Flynn calling upon the angels of light, no, the rays of light and the legions. Let me play this. So the other day I was talking about General Flynn and how the prayers that he leads his congregation of QAnoners through is not from the Bible. It's actually from a 1980s doomsday cult called the Church Universal Triumphant. Well, here he is leading the QAnoners in prayer. And if that sounds weird, it should. This is a political thing, isn't it?
We are your instrument of those sevenfold rays and all your archangels, all of them. We will not retreat. We will not retreat. We will stand our ground. We will not fear to speak. We will be the instrument of your will, whatever it is. In your name, and the name of your legions.
Again, this is something of an oath/prayer, but what you're actually hearing, again, it's not biblical. And the legions and the 7 rays of light that they are going to be conduits for and servants of come from a 1980s doomsday cult that were channeling angels and believing that they were fighting a deep state. They believed that they were channeling the great white brotherhood to fight deep evil. No different than the white hats versus the black hats. So I'm just pointing out that General Flynn here is actually using the Church Universal Triumphant. And they've repackaged it as the Church Universal Trump. And that's exactly what it is.
We are freeborn, and we shall remain freeborn. And we shall not be enslaved by any foe, within or without. So help me God. God bless you. God bless America. Thank you very much.
So there you have it. So that might sound somewhat biblical, but then when you go into this, so you go Church Universal Triumphant, it was a very successful church. I mean, it actually convinced a lot of people to sell their assets and move into bunkers for fear that Russia and China were about to drop nukes on everyone. Church Universal and Triumphant is an international New Age religious organization founded in 1975 by Elizabeth Prophet. And it's a theosophic organization. The world didn't end when this once thriving doomsday cult said it would. And the thing is, after they moved into the bunkers, the world didn't end, and they took credit for saving the world. So they didn't lose any of their credibility among their membership. Now, the main thing about this church is they believe that they're working with what they call ascended masters, who are people who have died to the world, but they still linger around to help us. And to me, this is a perfect explanation for this JFK Jr., Princess Diana, John Denver, Michael Jackson, and others that they say have left our world visibly, but they're still somehow working here. Says there are 200 that she identified, at least 200 ascended masters that had received this ancient wisdom. They claim to be messengers of the ascended masters. So, in a way, General Flynn is a messenger for the Kennedys. So is Trump. And the Kennedys, of course, are the bloodline of Christ. It says, as such, they communicate with the masters and deliver instructions to the world. And these dictations are believed to be channeled instructions. So you take channeled, and they have to be decoded and everything. And I'm just saying that 8chan, 4chan, Q drops, all these coded messages that they decode, yeah, it's all lifted out of this New Age cult. It's the same type of brainwashing program. Now it says here, one of the most important decrees is to invoke the violet flame to balance one's karma. It's the doctrine of the 7 rays, which has teachings about chakras and reincarnation. So, hearing this, can you still claim that the QAnon movement is a Christian thing? No, it's a New Age thing. It's Gnostic, it's part of the Western mystery tradition, and they do believe that they're bringing about a new Christ. And it doesn't have a happy ending. At the end of the Q road, you are in fact looking at a bloodbath, because they're going to kill all the Democrats. And if you disagree with that, you're free to call in. But that's basically their storyline. They're going to execute all the traitors, all the deep state, and we're going to have to stand down while they carry it out. So it would be dishonest to say that the QAnon movement isn't a violent extremist ideology. It actually is. Even if you think you have the moral high ground, it's the same motivation as radical Islam taking out the great Satan. This is a complete one-to-one thing that they have actually purposefully constructed. They have replaced the Quran radical with the QAnon radical. Great Satan is still the great Satan. It's still the same bad guys. The white Al-Qaeda or vanilla ISIS and the domestic violent extremist, it's pretty much one for one. They've replaced every facet of the previous threat with the new threat. This also explains why when you're looking at the construction of the QAnon thing, it's why they're trying to convince the public that these radicals have a fringe that are willing to pop off, and it's just this open call for violence, and we're waiting for it to pop off. Well, we're going to see it, in my opinion, likely this summer. Joined by Rocco Calzone, Diana South, TC. Hey, take a look at the screen here. This is we talked about this yesterday. This is a cover of The Economist from 2015. The weaker sex. You have a guy with a red cap inside of a male symbol that's pointed down. Looks like a Q, looks like a MAGA hat. This is years before Q, years before MAGA hats. What are the odds? Just another prophetic Economist cover. Commenter says, remember Heaven's Gate. They wore Nikes, shrouded in purple, committed suicide to get to the comet Hale-Bopp. Yes, Marshall Applewhite. And, there are some indications that Marshall Applewhite might actually be Jim Morrison's father, Admiral Morrison, playing a role. Interesting story if it's real, but this fear of cults is something that I think they also like to emphasize. It's not their cult, it's inherently bad. Alright, let's see here. The cult of climate change right now is ready for climate lockdowns. Again, shout out to Allergic to Bullshit for finding this. This is a short clip here just describing how The new normal is actually lockdown society, lockdown culture, locking down to save the planet. And so I would invite all of you who actually believe in global warming, just lock down early. Get a head start, start saving. If you want to call right back, I think I accidentally hung up on you, caller. John Bracey posted this tweet. First time in a movie theater since 2020, I'm the only one in a mask. I won't be back till 2024. Infinite Plane Radio.
Hey, I wanted to comment on the QAnoners and what they want to happen to the bunch on the left.
Okay, yes, let's talk about the QAnon tribunals. Can you have Q without tribunals?
I'm just, I didn't follow the Q drops. All I know is that I was following David Wilcock for a while, and he, so I'm going by information that I got from there. Supposedly he had insiders too, talking about all the sealed indictments, and they've been talking about this for a long time. It still doesn't seem to have happened, but according to what his synopsis of all of it was that there were going to be indictments through the courts, and they would be tried through the courts, and either, whatever the sentences would be for the crimes committed, it was going to go through legal courts, not some kind of, I don't know, what are you saying? I mean, how are these, this bloodbath supposedly, whose hands is this at, who's doing this?
I was told that QAnon and Trump are leading a military operation, and so these will be military tribunals, and we will be locked down at home, and we'll watch on TV as they execute the traitors. So when I think execute, even if it's for the right reasons, I'm not in favor of capital punishment necessarily, but the idea that we're going to watch the wholesale murder of a bunch of bad actors, it just sounds like, isn't there a better way? But I mean, to me, it sounds like a bloodbath.
Don't military tribunals even have some kind of a court process? They don't just put people against the wall. There's got to be some kind of process that goes with it.
Well, many of the QAnoners relish the idea that a lot of these people have already been killed. They'll say, oh, they already took out Tom Hanks. He got the shot. They took out Ellen DeGeneres. Oh, yeah, they killed. And they have a list of people. So they believe that bad guys are being executed at Guantanamo. And a lot of the QAnoners, they relish this because they believe that they're seeing devils being killed off. I mean, why wouldn't you?
I don't know. So that seems really an extreme group, though. It doesn't seem like, I mean, how many followers does Q have, kind of, in general, would you say?
Supposedly there are 40 million people who agree with the basic premise. That's from polls they've taken.
Okay.
Now, as far as, like, you can look at the Q group of people and just say you're just looking at patriots. You could, but you would be turning a blind eye to their central motivation, which is there is a deep state and it's global, and this is a military operation to uproot a global cabal. So you cannot separate Q from global cabal. That's their primary thing. It's like you can't take the devil out of the Bible.
No, and that's actually, I agree with that. I would say that they're probably right on that level, and that's a lot of the information that David Wilcock had also went into a lot of that. They went into the alliance, which is supposedly the people in the military that are the quote unquote good guys that are helping, and all of that. So yeah, it is a big story. Supposedly he had several insiders that he was getting information from that were attached to the military.
Well, if it's true, then it will be, by definition, a bloodbath. It just will be a draining of the swamp. There'll be people who deserve it. But you can't escape the fact that if you're talking about Hillary Clinton being hanged, or Bill Clinton being hanged, or burned Tom Hanks at the stake, well, how would you execute them? Bullets, lynching, necklacing?
Well, it depends on, where are the trials? And I don't know. I don't know what the logistics of that is, do you go by a state's jurisdiction, or the military has their own firing squad kind of thing? I mean, God, when's the last time anybody's even been, put up against the wall by the military?
Right. Well, whatever it is, the person who clued me into the Q thing told me that there's going to be military tribunals, so expect hangings and shootings. And he also said that as a matter of public record, it's going to be broadcast on the emergency broadcasting in every phone device. So every device will convey this to everybody, that the deep state is being destroyed. So even though it sounds bad the way I'm describing it as a bloodbath, it's a good bloodbath because it's bad blood.
Well, yeah, however, I don't know. And obviously, we're not knowing the logistics of military tribunals and how they actually would find somebody guilty of. And Hillary Clinton, why would she be tried by a military tribunal? That doesn't even make sense. She would be in a criminal court, right?
Well, I'm not the one who promulgates this stuff. I'm just pointing out what they actually do believe. And they do see the best case scenario, all the bad actors executed. And that does mean deaded. That means buried, bodied. They're going to be killed.
Yeah.
There's no nice way to frame this. You can't say, maybe they could give them a lethal injection or something like that. But I'm saying is that it involves death. It involves death. Lots of death.
Yeah. No, and let's look. If the accusations were true, then those are heinous crimes. But I think people that get caught with doing things like, some of them are killed, some of them are put in jail for life, whatever.
Kill baby eaters. I'm with it. Look, if they're actually doing everything that they're executed, then we're not even dealing with humans. We're dealing with demons in the flesh.
Yes, they are. They're subhuman. I agree 100%. Totally. If that's what's going on. Yeah.
So you can understand, I don't mean to mischaracterize them. They have good intentions. Like, if you want to kill the bad guys and you find out they're guilty of heinous things, it's not hard to see yourself as a good guy. But I just don't want to take away the essential fact that every terrorist thinks that they're doing the right thing, that they're fighting the great Satan. Yep. And I kind of think that they're going down a very dangerous path following people like General Flynn.
Yeah, well, and again, here we go. So 40 million, that seems kind of high, doesn't it? Do you really think they have 40 million followers?
Well, how many Trump voters were there? And then how many of the Trump voters believe the essential story of QAnon, which is actually just a reiteration of older concepts about world communism, about various groups. So I don't think it's far-fetched. Let me see where that figure came from. So I know it's mainstream, so we can trust it.
But he's lost a lot of people recently. When he started going for the vax thing, I think he turned off a bunch of his followers. And also, I will say, even if let's say there are 40 million, it seems to me like as far as like seeing red and wanting dripping blood and people dying by the thousands, no matter whatever they did or didn't do. It seems like that would be an extreme group. It wouldn't be the majority that actually would go that far as to actually wanting to kill.
Yeah,
I don't know.
I can look. I can agree.
But
look, it's kind of like you can be an apologist for radical Islam because only the fringe are going to strap on the bomb belts and run into the Jewish deli and yell Allah Akbar and blow themselves up. It's not the moderates.
Right.
But I'm saying it's the moderates that need to be held accountable for what the fringe do. So I'm not going to give the moderates any kind of slack because what they're doing is they're being set. What I'm saying is you can't.
I don't know if I agree.
Look, you can't be a moderate Q. If you believe in Q, you believe in murdering Democrats because they're evil blood drinkers. That's the bottom line.
I don't know. Where are the Q rules? Are there some rules that say that that's how it has to be if you really are? Are you just like, kind of a marginal Q follower then? I don't know. Come on, man.
Okay, is there a QAnon believer that doesn't believe in the cabal? Is there one Q believer that doesn't believe in the cabal?
I don't know a whole lot of QAnon.
I'm telling you, I've been studying the QAnoners. I've interviewed authors on the book, and there is a QAnon orthodoxy. There are things they believe. They have tenets of their faith. There's a reason why Eric Trump just got he got a Donald Trump painting with the lightning bolt Q halo. They believe that Q is good, fighting for the bloodline of Christ, aka the Kennedys, and that they're going to take out the deep state, who are a bunch of human trafficking, slave-owning, worthy of death pedophores. So, of course you want to kill the bad guys. So this is really I would say this is a very simple good versus evil dynamic they set up, and they're on good, the other guys are evil, and it's not even kill or convert. It's convict and kill once the sealed indictments are opened up.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, you got a point. I will agree. And, I've been shocked by people over and over again. So I guess I don't know why it would be so incredulous to me to think that people are really, believing, and there's a lot of stuff that I believe in. I do believe there's a bunch of freaking, crazy sex slave rings, like gigantic big rings that involve a lot of very famous people. So,
sure. Look, in their defense, the QAnoners, the Q believers, they have a point. They have lots of points, and they get a lot of things right. I just think that it's like controlled opposition. Like maybe a good percentage of what they're being told, or a lot of their assessment, is somewhat accurate, but I think they're being steered by bad actors. And when I found out this connection between General Flynn and this doomsday cult from the 80s, it set off some red flags for me, because that doomsday cult is pretty much teaching the same, or taught the same things that Q does, including this secret existence of extraterrestrials about to be revealed. So it's a new age thing, and I don't see how.
Well, that chant that you played, oh my God, that was gross.
And
that was just
look,
like, ugh.
Apparently that guy tells his inner circle that China's going to use EMPs, and that anyone that has been vaccinated more than 3 times is going to have their heads explode. That's what this guy's been telling people. He doesn't say it in these big meetings, but you got to pay.
All right, yeah. So if people believe that, then you know what? I'm just going to have to say, wow, okay. What do you say?
Yeah, exactly. Look, I just think people should own, their own religious beliefs or their paradigm. They should at least own up to what they're asserting. And I can agree with the idea that nobody wants a deep state. Nobody wants a bloated big state. Well, maybe not nobody. Sadly, a lot of people do.
Do you not think that there's a deep state? Do you not think that that's going on?
Oh, I think all state is deep state. I think the idea of saying the deep state is just pointing at the Democrats.
You're right.
But I think look, the right wing is also deep
overt
state.
And covert. Yeah.
I wish it was that cut and dry, that you could just point to the evil guys, and then you take the side of good, and you get rid of the evil, and then it's pure. But it's not that simple. And I think that this movement is a utopian kind of view, that they can perfect mankind. And this has always been criticized by conservatives. They used to criticize this stuff. The idea that you could have this utopian plan, perfect man's institutions, drain the swamp, and have everything perfect.
Flipped around, hasn't it?
Everything has literally flipped.
The mirror.
Yeah, it's remarkable,
There's
isn't
so
it?
many mirrors.
I mean, they've even made. You can find mainstream articles connecting this QAnon movement to a new hippie movement, and they're saying, oh, it's like the hippies are now right wing. They're now on the other side. I'm like, that's another example of this this mirroring, this inversion, or even.
I've been in awe, of all of it.
Yeah, it
Really.
is. It's an awesome story that we're watching, and it's certainly intricate, and it never gets dull. People who think the news is boring are only looking at the surface of it, and I think they try to keep it boring so you don't look too deep.
Yeah, boring, mesmerized, distracted. Yeah.
Yep, exactly.
Well, I love the stuff that you get into, man. You've got some great connections that you've been getting into, and it's really fascinating.
Awesome, and thanks for calling, and thanks for challenging my premise that the QAnoners are a bunch of bloodthirsty domestic violent extremists. Like, I'm not trying to mischaracterize them. I'm just slightly exaggerating, But
they are kind of just the other sheep. I gotta say, even though I do believe in a lot of the stuff they're talking about. So.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I never totally dismiss these things. I try to understand them, because.
Well, and you do say that, but I mean, when you start talking about all of them wanting to be, see blood dripping and would like to rip people's heads off themselves, it's like a little too much.
All right, hey, thanks for the call. Have a great night.
All right, you too. Good night.
Yeah, so if I don't want to mischaracterize, like I said, but we are talking about the core beliefs. The core beliefs here. All right, so let us continue. And look, I'm ready to let the QAnon thing drop, but then I get videos where they're talking about, oh, JFK Jr. was flexing on top of George Washington's stone head at Mount Rushmore. And then here's Donald Trump with an electric Q halo on a big painting, being handed to him by an artist with a wicked mullet. And Eric Trump is there. Wow, I love this. So you can't disassociate this group. And look, the QAnoners see this stuff, and this confirms. Oh yeah, he's an agent of the Kennedys, who are the reincarnation of the bloodline of Christ. That's what they extrapolate from that little exchange there. So it means something. Okay, we were talking about Babylon Bee getting banned for misgendering people. Covered Mercury Rising. Oh, the Riddler's the main thing here. So I haven't seen the new Batman yet. It's going to be streaming next month. If anybody here has seen it, we welcome spoilers. But from what I've gathered, you have a Bill Gates type villain, and then the Riddler, who peddles online conspiracy theories about hidden cabals controlling the government. Again, Riddler is Q. And this was so predictable again. Oh, here's some good news on when is this coming. There's going to be a comet twice the size of the dinosaur extinction rock. And I think this is this Tuttle? Is this the one that's going to kill us? Maybe it's this year. What happened to the asteroid 3 times the size of the Empire State Building that was supposed to kill us last Friday? Like, they must assume we don't have an attention span. It's the TikTokification of the news. It says, we are but a rock spinning through a void of space at a terrifying rate. This is difficult for the Earth that has to travel through the cosmos in close proximity to a number of asteroid belts. But now our planet is in danger of being assaulted by other space rocks. So Swift Tuttle has a 133-year orbit around our sun. Swift Tuttle is going to kill us very soon here. It's a cosmic snowball of frozen gas, rock, and dust. Leftovers from the formation of a solar system. Why is it so concerning? Swift Tuttle follows a very steep orbit around the sun, travels at 36 miles per second, and it's moving 4 times faster than the one that impacted the Earth. So it's just a reminder here, nothing about life on Earth is guaranteed. And that's the main thing. I think they tell you these stories to keep you in mind, to keep this forefront in your mind at all times. You can die. Global warming, asteroids, anything. You just have to always be aware that you're going to die. This is a nightmare scenario. We're on a terrifying journey through an infinite void of space. And I think it's the complete opposite. I mean, at this point, they've been wrong so often, they're just not reliable for their incoming predictions. Truth Hurt says, didn't a fridge-sized asteroid hit on 311? Yeah, I heard about that one. So they say. And these things are supposedly worth a ton of money. I mean, it's such a big joke. Do you remember in 2020 there was the coffin maker who found an asteroid, and I think he went and he sold it for £2 million or something. It was in Indonesia. And he was a struggling coffin maker in 2020. That was like my first clue that this thing was probably a hoax. It's like in 2020, if you're a coffin maker, you should be doing pretty well. Unless that was a hoax too. Here we go. Look, man sold meteorite to become a millionaire after it fell through the roof of his house. A 33-year-old coffin maker. Man becomes a millionaire as a 1,400,000 pound meteorite crashes through his roof. Man gets rich when meteorite from heaven crashes. Indonesian coffin maker, now millionaire. Let's see. A few people here have joined us in D Live. Restless Bear, Dave Sims. Look, if you want to be on D Live, you do notice the chat will integrate, so there's a link there if you want to go to that platform. I'm also keeping this on 24/7. We're turning it back on. I had to make some updates and change a few things around, but we're ready to go back 24/7. Also, get on the live stream notifications. Go to infiniteplane.radio. You get on the newsletter, but we also have text alerts. And text alerts are a great way to get past websites like YouTube that are very lazy when it comes to delivering notifications. Colin Kaepernick compared the NFL to slavery. Now he wants back in. So he's trying out, he's practicing. I believe he's in New Orleans yesterday. But he's been going around trying to get back in after having described it as literal slavery. So, I hope he gets what he wants there. Listen to this. I have no idea what this would mean for the ISS, but it could be that this is the last formal diplomatic link between the two nations. So we've been talking about the ISS's cracking apart at the seams and how it represents a breaking apart of our cooperation with regards to outer space. Are we going to proceed into the infinite universe and become a multiplanetary species as a bunch of space capitalists plundering the universe as we did the Earth? Or are we going to go out there as space communists, keep everything sustainable, make life down here on Earth also sustainable? This is the subtext behind the movie Don't Look Up, where the rich, greedy corporation owners don't want to deflect the comet, they want to mine it, which brings about our universal destruction. So the storyline there was, listen to the scientists. And the scientist that they bring to you today is the character portrayed by Leonardo da Vinci, who's something of a Noah, warning the wicked, who don't really believe him. They think he's eccentric or whatever, but he's proven to be right. And the character that they portray is a pill-popping agoraphobe. He's terrified of the sky. And this is actually a repeated theme with the protagonist in Moonfall. Another scientist looks kind of like the character DiCaprio was playing in Don't Look Up. And he, too, is riddled with anxiety and constantly popping pills. The subtext being, if you knew how bad global warming was, you wouldn't be able to sleep at night. So anyway, this represents the fundamental split here. Because if we continue on the path that we're going, we, being the Titanic, we're going to hit an iceberg. So that's why they keep on honing in on images of Jeff Bezos on a mega yacht, the guy who owns the Blue Origin. They want to convey the richest man in the world can't be the guy that decides how we move forward. So this is the story. This is the basis for this ideological divide and why Russia and America are breaking up. Well, anyway, Russia tells U.S. ambassador that ties are on the verge of being severed. And this is from Reuters. But this was all predicated by a lot of stuff that we could see, hardly even having to read between the lines, just looking at the relations up above. And this summer, they even had literal cracks in the space station. All right, we're joined by me and my drone. Appreciate the gematria. I'm not really into numerology. We do notice a whole lot of patterns here. And I don't really interpret these things. I'm not really into the New Age stuff. But there is a symbolic language and a system of symbolism that you can interpret the meaning of things from usage. And that's pretty much what we've been doing this time. It helps to remain active. There are people who go deeper into the symbolism and assert that this means that, but I kind of think that's you lose objectivity. All right, some other headlines here. Again, the Batman movie has a QAnon villain, or sort of a anti-hero, I guess you could say, in the Riddler. From Z to Q, when letters become political symbols. So now they're going to go after your Z's as well. and pull them off the keyboards. It's like one of these days, you're just not going to have a Q. And you might think I'm joking. And it might have started off as a joke. Like I used to joke that there was no meaningful distinction between Hollywood and the news media. But no, it's a fact. It's an observation. Most of our so-called conspiracy theories are just observations. But I've been saying, they're going to remove the Qs from your keyboards. Well, it sounds like a laughable proposition, but what happens when they get rid of keyboards? You don't have the analog and the physical keys, but it's all digital. When it's digital, it becomes that much easier for them to actually remove them. Like imagine if you had emoji keys, and you had an emoji key for the laugh crying emoji. Well, look, you wouldn't have it anymore. Or you would still, I mean, if it was a key, you would still have it, but because it's not an actual key, you've lost it. The emoji that's crying has been, I guess, associated with hate and sarcasm more than actual laughing with joy. So it's hate laughing. So the crying, laughing emoji has been canceled. And I'm just saying they're coming for your Qs. They're coming for your question marks, and now Z. The tears of joy emoji is the worst. This is from The Guardian. I mean, how sensitive are these people? It's used to gloat about human suffering. So anyway, this is a banned emoji. So here, my point is this: it's not a slippery slope argument to say one day they're banning an emoji, the next day they're banning a letter. It's sort of a contemporary, blasphemy is what they're trying to create here. All right, let's see what else. Are Russian cosmonauts define Putin from space? Spacemen wear the colors of Ukrainian flag as they arrive on the ISS. I saw this the other day. The new Russian crew that came up, they're wearing yellow and blue. Wearing the colors of Ukraine's flag. Now, Putin's trying to downplay it. I don't think you really can. A QAnon surfer thought he was Neo from the Matrix before he killed his children. So this is an interesting story. It's fake through and through. If you look at every single picture, look at everything attached to this story, you will not find anything associating this individual with any kind of Q or Trump or MAGA. None of the pictures are convincing in the slightest. But this was one of these stories that I more or less had predicted. I had said keep an eye on August 8th through the 11th for some left coast Manson-esque killing or atrocity to be blamed on the QAnoners. And sure enough, on that day we had our QAnon Charles Manson. And this is the guy who killed his kids because Q told him to. But anyway, they've been talking to him and he says that he felt like Neo in the Matrix. This is after he was arrested. So what does this mean? I think what we're looking at here is this idea that they want to demonize the people who see themselves identifying with the guys fighting the Matrix. So if you identify with Roddy Piper from They Live, Neo from the Matrix, Truman from the Truman Show, yeah, you're one of these guys. You're dangerous. Again, this is all just, to me, it's a psyop to create a new archetype to scare people with. I think that's why they chose this particular scenario. They were showing that the toxic misinformation from flyover country can even reach these safe enclaves on the left coast and radicalize someone when the wife's not watching and then he kills the kids. So this is just meant to show that no one is safe until this information is bottled up. His name was Matthew Coleman. Again, he's sort of a right-wing Charles Manson in the sense that, or there's a couple of parallels here. One, anniversary of the Manson killings, he does this atrocity. Two, he's the visible face for this right-wing hippie movement, used to demonize it, much as Manson misrepresented the hippies who were on the other side, more or less, the anti-war side. We're looking here at a construct. Matthew Coleman, the dad who killed kids over QAnon theories, deteriorated rapidly. Now, according to him, Q told him to kill the reptilians. And again, I follow the Q. I've listened to QAnon. I've read all their stuff. I follow all of their leaders and main Twitter accounts. And what I've discerned here is that they're not about reptilians. They're about this deep state thing. There's no mention of reptiles. It's really not a thing. So the idea that Q told him that his wife was a reptilian and he had to kill his kids, yeah, that's completely made up stuff. And it's pretty it's pretty much of a stretch to me that he would be a QAnon person, because anybody who's even slightly radical QAnon, even if they're just sampling the Kool-Aid, they've got the swag. They've got the bumper stickers. They've got the TikTok, the Twitters, the accounts where they're going out across the country waving their flags, and that's all absent here. So I don't really buy it. Again, the 22nd, it's the 42nd anniversary of the Georgia Guidestones, first anniversary of the King Super shooting, many other psyops, so I think a lot of people are more or less predicting it. Tomorrow will be a super day for a psyop, so I'll be definitely keeping you abreast of what's going on there. I'm probably going to go back tonight and head straight to the Discord server. We're working on a new episode of South Pole, and we put a lot of time into this one. And the more time we put into it, the longer the episode's going to turn out. So there's no problem there. Subscribe to the newsletter if you want to get archives. We've been covering a lot of interesting stories lately. This recent psyop with Marilyn Manson and Evan Wood, which has some interesting Kubrick tie-ins. And, interestingly enough, Marilyn Manson himself ties in pretty intricately to this QAnon story. This formerly underground belief that the Kennedys were indeed the bloodline of Christ returned. Can't believe this is almost mainstream political discourse. That you actually have a wing of a party, you have a political faction that its base actually thinks that they're going to be somehow saved by some kind of deified dead president. We've been talking about Kanye West going OJ, so we'll see what happens there. Russia is going to Mars by itself. I'm pretty sure Space Wars has begun. All right, I think we've covered pretty much everything for now. Again, Vincent Fuchsia is running for Senate. So if you're out there in Monroeville, you can go meet the guy that the QAnoners for years believed was JFK Jr. in some kind of disguise. Diana South says, I like Q because it's a soap opera. It has good entertainment value. It is entertaining. It is interesting. And what we're witnessing, too, from a perspective of maybe if you're an anthropologist, you're looking at the emergence of a new religion. It's a new Christianity. And before Christianity was codified into the Gospels, it was sort of an oral tradition, sayings attributed to Jesus that were passed around, and it's been referred to as Q source. Q source. So that's kind of fascinating in itself, because I think we're actually witnessing a new Q source. That's pretty much, I think, the best way to describe this thing. And this is a new religion. It's complete with an eschatology, and they're actually praying for it. They can't wait for the world to end so they can fix it and build back better. It's like everyone wants their own version of a reset. They just can't agree on who gets to decide what the post-reset world's going to look like. All right, I'm going to maintain the 24/7 stream. So if you're here in YouTube, just stick around. It's going to stay on 24/7. It's going to go back into the archives. So thanks again, everyone, for joining. And again, I'm going to have the replay on the other channel in the morning. Get on the newsletter so you can get archives sent to your inbox. And then, of course, you can always get the text message notification. So if we get kicked off this channel, which is likely at some point, you'll get a notification that will send you directly to the next channel and the next one until they stop terminating our channels. But look, I don't have that expectation. Anyway, we've evolved. Really, if you think about it, we're something of a sleeping giant. That's why you see all these Penguin Godzilla memes. It's because that's what's coming in the future. Anyway, this is 33rd Degree. Listen for Tim.
This is the court of the 33rd degree. I was taken aback a little suddenly as I looked askance at this door in front of me. Yes, there was a black lady stating it to be the Supreme Court of the 33rd degree.
You are. You are listening to Infinite Plane Radio. Stick around for live call-in shows. Stay for the music and recent replays. Join us at infiniteplane.live for 24/7 live chat with other listeners.
Puzzle, face mask muzzle. Go into my grandma's house. Shut it, shut up, cover your mouth.